Hi, I'm Rose. Welcome to Te Kiteroa, a retreat centre and historic homestead in the South Island of Aotearoa, New Zealand. A beautiful 20-room Edwardian home built in 1913 that my family have been the custodians of for 30 years. Te Kiteroa was built as the grand retirement dream of a phenomenal woman, Mrs. Emily Phillips, who rose above her career in service as a housekeeper and was left a fortune by her benevolent employer. Building this fabulous, iconic piece of architecture, our family are passionate about sharing this remarkable place and have set about creating the newest lease on life as a retreat centre to share the tranquility and special kind of peace that comes with stepping through Te Kiteroa's doors. My parents, Anne and Gary, live here all the time. I live about half an hour away beside the ocean, and together we bring to life nourishment for the mind, body and soul, hosting retreats, workshops, mind food talks and more, with many friends, guests and volunteers who add to our colourful, eclectic life here, taking care of and renovating a historic property and having many, many laughs along this journey called life. Got myself very comfortable in the beanbag today. Haven't you, Shiloh? Fit for a princess. So one of the things I do is I run our Te Kiteroa website. So I've been working today on uploading things like our new vlog episode. This is very meta, vlogging about the vlog. And I've also been doing things to do with our upcoming events that are happening, making sure that our page for buying tickets and our upcoming retreats are all on the website. So we have some really cool historical talks coming up in February, between the 7th to the 21st in February, that tickets are on the website now, and our day retreats through February as well. So we've got the 15th, 27th, and then at the first weekend of March, we've got a really awesome retreat being hosted by one of my dear friends, Jay Omnett, and she is incredible, and I'll show you a little bit more about her retreat. This is our wonderful friend Jay, who is a yogi, a Reiki master, just an incredible all-round human being, and she is running a retreat the first weekend of March, and I will be coming along and sharing some of my gifts with meditation, sound bath, and sharing some of my knowledge with the people who come on the retreat as well. So it is going to be so fun. Very much looking forward to this coming up, and the accommodation with us as well. So I'm going to sit down with Mum just now, and we are going to run you through the story of Te Kiteroa over the past century. Can you run us through what the first moments were when you came across Te Kiteroa and how it came to be in your ownership?
Because I'm from London and met Gary, my husband, who's from Waimate. So we were working overseas, and it was after we were married in London, and we used to come back and visit Gary's family in Waimate each year. And it was on one of those trips when we came back and we were visiting his mother, and I became curious as to the hills, the back of Waimate, and I asked one day, I said, how can you get up into the hills there? So Gary drove up Point Bush Road. There was a for sale sign that was hanging on the fence line, and I was rather intrigued, and I was looking around at the hills, and I was looking at this huge old homestead. As it turned out, in fact, it was the hill block that was for sale at that time. And we did actually pursue the information in town, and we went down, and there was an auction to be held, and we actually ended up being the proud owners of 2/3 of the hill block that was being sold by the local farmer, next door neighbour at Hiwaroa. And it was after probably another year we got to know the people who had actually bought this old homestead that we first espied, called Te Kiteroa. And we were then contacted subsequently by the owners at the time, Zita and Tom, and they wrote to us while we were overseas and said, seeing as you've bought the hill block just on the Hunter Hills behind Te Kiteroa, would you be interested in purchasing Te Kiteroa? And we thought, well, that might just work. As it turned out, we didn't actually come back for about another 15 years, but we did actually acquire Te Kiteroa.
So we obviously have done a lot of research into Mrs. Phillips, who was the very first owner, and built the whole place.
Yes.
And she passed away in 1921. So what happened? You know a bit more about what happened on her death.
It was, I think, everything was sold and auctioned, and the estate was cleared. And then a family from Dunedin, it was advertised, and there was a Napier family in Dunedin who ran another guest lodge there, and the grandpa and grandma, apparently Napier, were interested enough. They bought and moved to Waimate with their family. Now they ran the lodge presumably from, I think, about this must be then about 1926, and they were in residence until about 1945. So the Napier family ran it as a guest lodge, and they had their own members of family staying, and I think it was through some years where it was quite hard going, but they did have quite an extravagant lifestyle.
We've been able to meet some of the actual family members. So that family was because we've got some photos that I'm going to share.
We went to visit Cynthia, and Cynthia visited Te Kiteroa and was able to tell us much about her life as a teenager, 16-year-old, living at the lodge and very away at boarding school for much of the year, but absolutely loved her ponies, and she had many memories to share with us about her time living at the lodge, and a stepbrother, John Quaife, who we have met, and he's also visited and talked about his grandparents running the guest lodge and the many visitors they had.
And John was quite young when he was there, wasn't he?
He was quite young.
Because we've got photos of him as a boy.
Yes, he was about 5 or 6 years old.
And how old's John now, do you think?
Oh my goodness, John's in his 90s. Keep in contact with John because he has some very clear memories of the house and the lifestyle and the grounds.
So it was sort of that late 40s, 50s era.
30. He actually told me that his earliest memory was in 1931. Yeah.
And so then after the Napiers, it sat empty for a few years, didn't it?
It did.
And then it was the women's division.
The women's division, Federated Farmers, which at the time was the headquarters were in Wellington, and they had several homes around New Zealand which were designated for farmers' wives who were members of the various regional divisions of the WDFF. And this was a wonderful opportunity for women who were in need of rest, recuperation, companionship to actually book into the likes of Te Kiteroa. They have their meals provided, and they were able to rest and be looked after.
Well, they got breakfast in bed on a tray, didn't they?
It was very
lovely for them to have that.
Yes, it's hard to imagine, but it must have been absolutely luxurious for a hard-working farmer's wife who was traditionally up at crack of dawn or before baking for the shearers and their own family and looking after family themselves, to suddenly be treated to breakfast in bed on a tray, and the whole day was geared around eating, I think. But it was breakfast in bed, followed by morning tea, followed by lunch, which apparently was a roast and quite a substantial meal, a midday meal, followed by afternoon tea and light supper.
And so then they they owned the property right through, it was about 40 years, wasn't it?
More.
4 decades?
Yeah, right, 1945, right through to around 1977. This was a really large chunk of the life of the homestead of Te Kiteroa. It was under the women's division supervision. Well known. Many women of today remember their mothers or aunts having stayed there, and so it's looked upon those times as very fondly and with great memories. There was a couple that took up the challenge, and this was Zita Taylor and Tom Scree, years, as I say, and we had by then entered into this agreement that we were going to take over after a few years of their running it. And they set up actually an amazing silver service wee restaurant, and apart from the guest lodge, they had a dine-in silver service, fine dining. They had a young chef, and they won quite a few lamb cuisine awards in their time. So they really transformed the usage of the place.
And so then after you came back to New Zealand in about 2007, and then, because obviously you've had some very prestigious events and guests come to stay, the Governor General, which is quite a affair to have to organise. Any number of weddings, I don't know, probably lost track of the number of weddings.
As you say, a very varied selection of events, and some last minute disaster with drinks being spilled onto the bridesmaid dresses, which suddenly meant a quick wash down with a damp flannel on a hairdryer to suddenly smarten everybody up.
And then I guess you've had some other interesting moments that come with running an century-old home.
Well, that's right. I had the night before got ahead, I thought, and laid the white cloth, and I'd laid all the cutlery and the crockery, and all I had to do was go in and put the cereal and the toast and all those bits and pieces out. And I stood in the entrance of the dining room, and I couldn't quite compute the brain, and what I was viewing was a large dining table with the white cloth totally like a swimming pool, waterlogged. It was dripping on the floor. It was complete as if somebody had got a hose and washed the whole room down with water. And I gazed upwards at the ceiling to see that water was running, cascading down one of the hanging ceiling lights, basin running, overflowing, having disrupted the whole household. But one of probably the most successful and enjoyable, apart from some of the weddings that we had, was the celebration of the 100th year of Te Kiteroa being built in 1913. So in 2013, we did organise with a marquee. We invited probably near 100 or more guests, so it was quite glorious, yeah.